All right, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We know that re:Invent is a huge event. There's so much to do and see. I very much appreciate you all taking time out of your experience to spend part of your week with us. Show of hands, how many people here work for or with an organization that struggles with knowledge loss from talent attrition and high turnover? Yeah, a lot of folks here. Good news is you're in the right place. That's exactly what we're going to spend the next hour talking about and how we're leveraging Gen AI to help address exactly that problem. My name is Erin Dunlop. I am a Senior Enterprise Account Manager with AWS, and it is my privilege today to introduce and share the stage with our speakers from Georgia Pacific, Roshan Shah and Carter Smith. Roshan?
Thanks, Erin, and thanks everybody for being here. As Erin mentioned, my name is Roshan Shah. I'm responsible for all things AI at Georgia Pacific. My title is Vice President for Applied Analytics and Applied AI and Products.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Carter Smith. I'm the Gen AI product leader at Georgia Pacific, and I'm very excited that you get to spend your lunch hour with us today talking about how we've improved the lives of our operators. So to go through kind of just in general what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk a little bit about just an overview of who we are as a company, what makes our challenge unique, and then how we applied technology to close that gap that we have on learning and development, right? As folks start to retire and move on to other things, so that we can make sure we still have all of the capabilities we need in our facilities. So we'll go through that. We'll go through kind of the life cycle and iterations of everything that we've created, and we'll kind of talk about what's next for us.
Now, this story in particular is about 2 years in the making. It began back in early 2023 when Gen AI burst onto the scene. And I think at that time, everyone knew that Gen AI was something big and it was going to be a very impactful change for their organizations. But what exactly to do with it, how to get started, was still a bit of a question mark for many organizations. So when Roshan called me and said, hey, Erin, Gen AI is going to change the way that GP does business, I said, awesome. You're right. Maybe we could start over here. We could do this. We could try that. We have customers experimenting with this type of use case. And Roshan said, let me stop you right there. We know exactly where we're going to start. We know exactly how it's going to change the lives of our people that work at Georgia Pacific, and we want to build it with AWS. As an AWS person, right, that is everything that we want to hear. A well-defined use case, impactful to end users, a commitment to build with us. However, the tech landscape has evolved a lot, right? Like we've all come a very long way with Gen AI over the past 2 years. So if you reflect back to early 2023, Bedrock was not GA. It didn't GA until later in the year. So this presented a very unique opportunity for Georgia Pacific and AWS to collaborate and innovate together to build a first-of-a-kind solution with a pre-GA service with talent who had really never done this type of work with LLMs and foundational models before, and build something that really changed the daily lives of end users. Taking a step back and rewinding a little bit further, though, I think it's important to mention and kind of pay tribute to the journey that Georgia Pacific has come along over the past decade or so. One of the things that made GP able to quickly capitalize on Gen AI and move so quickly when early 2023 came around and we all saw the value in implementing large language models is that GP was really a good decade into their cloud transformation at that point and had a solid foundation to build upon. Going back to 2016 with Georgia Pacific's first migration to AWS, over the number of years that followed, GP really invested significantly in building out a solid data foundation, which led to a natural progression into data-driven solutions. Today, Georgia Pacific has hundreds of thousands of sensors and streams IoT data to AWS. There's over 30,000 machine learning models in production that execute every second. And over the past couple of years, that's really enabled GP to expand their focus into people and processes and bridging the silos that exist between IT and business. So when 2023 rolled around and we knew exactly where to go after with Gen AI, the foundation, the people, the alignment was already in place to enable us to move quickly. To really understand a little bit better about GP's culture of innovation, though, it might be helpful to start with a little bit of background information on GP as a company. So I'd like to pass it to Roshan to share with you all a little bit more about Georgia-Pacific as an organization before we dive into the details of the story.
Thanks, Erin. So as Erin just mentioned, we've been at it for quite some time, but before we get specifically into what all that means, how did we kind of come about making some of that happen, let's talk a little bit about what Georgia-Pacific is, who we are, and what do we do in the communities that we operate. One quick thing, though. As we talk through this, it certainly appears as we have kind of had all of our ducks in a row, but there's been quite a few mistakes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But just who's GP? So it's a subsidiary of Koch Industries, Koch with KOCH. GP in particular, about 30,000 employees, a little north of $20 billion in revenue, 140 manufacturing facilities across North America. And as a company, we've grown through acquisition. What that means is we've got about one of each thing, right? It's rare for us to find the same equipment across facilities. So we've got a lot of diversity, a lot of different vintage of equipment. We as a company are made up of 3 business units. The first one that most people are familiar with would be the consumer products line of business. This is where, when you shop at your Walmart or your grocery stores, when you buy Brawny or Dixie, AngelSoft, we make those. When you go into restrooms and you see those end-motion paper towel dispensers, we make those. Another line of business for us is building products. So think about the 2x4, the plywood, the OSB, the drywall, or the gypsum wallboards, we make those. And then the third one is the packaging and cellulose business. What that means is when you go onto Amazon and you buy something and it comes in that brown box, we make a lot of those boxes. And we do that at very large scale, very rapid speed. And also finally, there's the adult incontinence products, diapers, if you will. The soaking material that goes into those, we make those. And again, as I mentioned, the 3 business units, that makes up about a little north of $20 billion in annual revenues. So does that really connect with everybody? Well, here's how that matters. About 2/3 of American households, our products are there. And from a business standpoint, about 40% of all businesses consume one or more of our products. So it's an integral part of the American economy. So why are we on this transformation journey using technology? Is it just because technology is cool and we all kind of want to play in that space? No, not really. Here is the business case for it. Number one, as Erin mentioned earlier, we, probably most of you in this room, we struggle with attrition and a lot of experience, talent, and knowledge loss. As that happens, in our complex equipments, that's very large equipment, older equipment, where we don't have a lot of documentation, we need to figure out how do we build capability such that we can move away from experience-based to data-driven. And that's really kind of not optional. We kind of have to figure that out. Number two, as I mentioned, we've been around for quite some time, and we've got a lot of older assets. Now, we can go down the path of recapitalizing that, but that's not as profitable. That's not the value equation is not there. So figuring out how do we get more out of our existing assets, or in other words, getting assets to tell us when it needs help, that becomes very important. That becomes, it's certainly economical for us. And then the third thing is, as technology continues to be cheaper, right? Every day it gets cheaper, right? It will get more capability. So if we can figure out how we can adopt that, then we can be competitive in the marketplace. And when we think about extending the life of the assets, where we can use technology to do that, that kind of makes our lives a little easier. And that's been, when you think about those three things, they kind of add up on top of one another, and that's been the key change for us as an organization. So before we talk about specifically how all that means, I'll actually pass it off to Carter to give us a little flavor for what that means.
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about this problem, but to think about how does that impact our actual operators, folks that are really living this issue every day. We have an interview here with a gentleman named Clay, who works in one of our Dixie facilities as a learning and development trainer. And he's gonna talk through the issues that he's seen and kind of, again, re-solidify why we've gone after this as our primary use case.
My name is Clay. I work here at Dixie, here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I've been with Dixie for 12 years now.
What challenges do you have in training your employees?
Some of the troubles that I have as a trainer is being able to find the things to train these guys with and train them on.
How have we traditionally supplemented a lack of documentation?
Some of the ways that we capture a lot of the training now that you can't find inside of these documentations is just hands-on training from some of the older guys and the ladies and employees that's been here a while that know the shortcuts, know the tips and the tricks to get things to work that maybe not be in a training manual. Of course, these guys, they leave or they move departments and take that knowledge with them, and that's almost like having to start all back over again.
What does good look like for learning and development?
It would be nice if I had a place, a resource that I could get this no matter where I was, what shift I was on, or what team I was on, a certain location where I could go gather this information and it be available to me as somebody who wants to learn and be trained.
People are our most valuable resource. How do we enable them to be successful?
So before we specifically start talking about how do we actually solve for that, I want to talk about the approach on what kind of worked for us and what hasn't worked for us. As you probably just heard Clay talk about, there are a lot of things in there that would be very helpful. For example, how do I get to the information as quickly as possible? How do I keep from training somebody and then that person walking away with that knowledge? We need to retain that, and we need to make that all accessible and easy and keep it in a system. And we'll talk about how we accomplish that, but let's spend a few minutes talking about kind of the lessons learned for us. The number one thing as we think about use cases or where we start, we've learned that we kind of have to work on problems that matter. If we are chasing somebody's pet project, it's only a matter of time before somebody else comes along asking, hey, why are we doing that and how does that show up on a P&L? So we've had to deliberately focus very hard on working on problems that matter. Well, how do we define that? Anything that has an impact on environmental health and safety, right? That's kind of a given. But then immediately after, if we can focus on and solve problems where we will see that in the P&L through productivity, quality, and be able to do that at scale, I think that's very important. When we talk about scale, what we mean by that is we have 140 manufacturing facilities across North America, which means if we can work on $10 million problems and be able to scale that across facilities, all of a sudden the value proposition on that becomes much more attractive as opposed to solving 50 problems across 140 facilities. In the 7 years that we've kind of been around, 6 years as a team, there's only 6 large use cases that we work on, and those have high value proposition attached to it, 8 or 9 figures with each. The second lesson learned in there has been, this notion of experimental discovery over grand plan. And what we mean by that is, it's easy to think about it and like, oh, well, we're going to go do this, then this will happen, and then this will happen, and we'll kind of see a lot of money at the end of the table, or end of the work process. That doesn't kind of happen. So what we've learned is if we can start on something small, be able to deploy it, be able to learn from it, quickly adapt and build on it if that's a success, those tend to be much better. So we've kind of gone from spending weeks and months thinking about something and doing a lot of work around it to being able to say, okay, let's go and try and tackle something and be able to come back from it and learn. Number 3, this notion of zero hallucination. Why does that matter? With all things machine learning models or generative AI particularly, we've kind of learned it the hard way, but also recognizing that in the context of manufacturing, you can't really have a lot of hallucinations or fake news, if you will. If you give an operator, an end user, a capability, and they make a decision off of that, and God forbid they get hurt, that's a bad day, right? But then number 2, if you give them something and then they make a decision that keeps them from going home at the end of their shift on time, that's not going to get you usage the second time around. So this has been an opportunity where we've partnered very heavily with AWS to say, how do we build software, how do we build these models and tune it so if the model doesn't know an answer, I would rather the model say, I don't know, versus give us fake news and cause us all kinds of heartburn. So that's been a very key component, this notion of zero hallucination. And then finally, wherever this has been profitable, this use of AI to be able to solve a problem, we've actually deliberately been able to integrate complex AI with equipment the size of this building and letting AI control these legacy assets. And that's been, again, very important and beneficial to us because as these AI processes control equipment, that means we can focus on something else. So that's freed us up to focus on other set of problems, and that's been crucial to it. I'll pass it off to Carter to talk about a use case.
Yeah. So this is the journey we've been on. We began, like Roshan said, in June of last year, and this was really to identify the problem. So essentially you would say, do I want to start with technology and try to find something to fit that technology to? We want to find the problem and see if the technology can help us. So we're a little agnostic to the actual technology itself. We're using it to solve our problem, but at the end of the day, we try to keep that value and that help for the operators at the top of our priority. We began in June, then we reached out and got the connection with ProServe in July of 2023, and we went and worked on our MVP. By the end of the year, we had 2 instances in production on 2 paper machines in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And we had great feedback from the operators. We were able to give them structured and unstructured data responses so that we could get really holistic troubleshooting advice. So it's a little bit of where am I right now? Where should I be? How do I get there? Which is really the core of what we want operators to learn as they're going through their job process. So with this, we've obviously moved into scaling and it was successful, but we ran into an issue. In that, we realized that there are a lot of facilities that don't have that documentation. They don't have best practices written down. They don't have fully updated, job aids and assistance and things that typically you would want to use to feed into your model. So what does that mean? Does that mean we can't use it anymore? We had to come up with a solution because we thought the value was there. In doing so, which I'll go into more detail a little bit later, we created what we call DocGen, or document generation. And the purpose of that is so that we can rapidly pull information from subject matter experts, senior operators, senior staff, and get data that is specific to that facility or specific to that piece of equipment so that we can inform the chatbot. And we're calling this chatbot our operator assistant. Essentially, we want this to be the operator that never forgets. You tell it once, it's always going to be there for you, 3 a.m, Saturday, what have you, so that when our facilities that run 24/7 need help, it's there for them and it's always going to have the right answer. So we've continued to scale these capabilities. Currently, as of today, we have over 20 instances in production and we're continuing to scale. So this is a little snapshot of what our operator assistant looks like. You can see, obviously, a question and a response. This is actually a little bit advanced, I would say, from where we first started. One of the things I really want to reiterate is that this is an iterative process, okay? Throughout the entire thing, we're not gonna do it once and leave it. This is about developing every day, getting feedback from your customers, and ensuring that we're delivering what they need and what creates value for them. In this case, you can actually see on the left-hand side of the screen, that is an alert. So we were running into situations where you could ask a question, hey, if I run into this problem, what do I do? Well, what if the equipment is down and that problem is right now? Are you going to remember to run over to a computer and type it in and ask that question? That adds a layer of hindrance into getting the information you need. And like Roshan mentioned before, for us, it's important to get that to them as quickly as possible so that they can act as quickly as possible. In this, it's actually highlighting an alert. This is a fault where the line went down, and it automatically triggers in the back end with prompt engineering and gives a response that gives a complete trouble cause correct, which is what we basically say is a recommended action based on where we are. And so an operator can look at this and essentially say, okay, here's what I'm seeing out in the field, here's what's recommended to me, this is what I need to move forward with, and they can go through there. We obviously take feedback very important. I think that's something that as anybody starts this journey, I would encourage that you have a place for everyone that is coming in and asking questions to log in when they have an issue. They could say, great answer, or this is the worst answer I've ever heard. You know, I need to add some more to it. There's more needed. We have feedback available in every single question that's returned so that we can review that and continue to iterate and continue to make it better.
To build on to what Carter just mentioned, this notion of alerting, what tends to happen is we think of these chatbot type of environment, put it in front of an end user and say, great, ask it questions when you have one. The problem with that is that infers and a person knows what to expect or what questions to ask. As we talked about, most of these operators have not been in their jobs for too long. When we were used to having years of experience, we have a couple months. So knowing what questions to ask is a big hurdle. Mm-hmm. So what Carter and team and we've been able to accomplish is, again, towards that left, it is prompting the end user saying, hey, these things are happening. So in other words, it's kind of giving an operator a overview of, you've got these problems, click on it, and then it turns different colors and to get your attention. And as you click on it, it will then walk you through a problem you may not even know is occurring. And that's been the name of the game. Which kind of goes, to build onto that, what do you do when you don't have all of these? And I'll let Carter talk more about it.
Right, so this is going back to what I mentioned before, right? When we were trying to scale, we were noticing that, a lot of things back in the day, some of these mills are very old. If you think about original equipment manuals, they were probably typed on a typewriter. They could be lost. They could have been stuck in someone's drawer. Who knows when they'll be seen again? So there's a lot of information that just got lost over the years, and a lot of it lives in our operators' heads. So to pull back the point Roshan mentioned about we've got folks that, really have come up into their jobs very quickly. If I think about the senior job on a shift, typically, traditionally that job would have taken 30 to 35 years to get to. Now we've got people that have gotten there in 8. And while we obviously have training and things like that so that they can be certified and ready to run the equipment, there's going to be oddball things that happen that don't happen often. The things that happen in the middle of the night that happen once every 3 years, if you come up through the ranks quickly, you don't have the experience of having to deal with those. So what we had found is that a lot of folks, in terms of troubleshooting, knowing what they need to actually go after, in those situations, it was dragging it out, making it take quite a long time. So we felt that being able to pull that information back, getting those more senior people that have the experience that would know what to do in those situations, and taking that information down was going to be really, really critical for us to understand how we can then train the younger generation coming through. So we, in a lot of cases here, would reach out to subject matter experts. This could be a corporate resource. This could be, a senior person on a shift. It could be the operators in their position, the most senior person that really understands the process. Basically, we interviewed anybody that had knowledge, and we've created a process where with a verbal interview, where they do not have to actually type anything down, because I am an engineer by background and I hate writing things down, so they don't have to do that either. We can just speak into it. And in doing so, it will generate a fully fleshed document that not only can inform the LLM, which is what we're using it for, but it can also be a standalone document. So if they want to train, have it on them, use it as part of their normal workflow, they can do so. So this is a little look. Both of these documents were fully generated by AI. That is including pictures, by the way. So just to give an example, the one on the left is more of what we would call a book format, something that you would read in a manual or document, where we have automatically generated, the format, the titles, essentially going through step by step everything that we want to go through. On the left-hand side, we have the standard operating procedure. For those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with manufacturing, for every process that we have, shutting down a pump or starting up a piece of equipment, we have a written procedure that's very important that we follow, and we call those standard operating procedures. In there, it's meant to talk about hazards, issues that you might face, risks, and then goes through the steps, step by step. And here, we've documented actually exactly those things, putting them front and center so folks can understand the safety risks involved in these types of processes. I will say that when we first began this journey, it was quite interesting. I sat down with some more senior operators and I brought a little microphone like you might see on a podcast. I put it in the middle of the table and I said, okay, I'm going to interview you. And they were like, what? You're going to what? No, right? And they were very scared. It was a little weird to kind of just talk openly into a microphone when I asked them, hey, when you run into this problem, what do you do? But when it came out this way and we were actually able to get it in a nicely formatted document and they were able to see that, yes, their information was in there, it was from them, they just went, man, I sound really smart. Like, this is great. And so it really opened it up for them. I think that's been another big piece of our adoption process. This is not something where we're trying to give people just books and lists and say, do it my way. We've got a lot of different complex processes that have different vintages, different manufacturers. There's a lot of really unique challenges in our business. And so being able to have information created by the folks actually running it not only gives us a more accurate view in all of our modeling, but it gives them confidence in that what people are asking will be the right answer. It won't be something that someone's pushing down to them.
One of the points to build on to what Carter said, to be able to put a microphone and then have this document come out, that's hugely important and impactful. But then we have asked folks who retired and kind of, paid folks on a time and material basis over a phone call and said, hey, how would you go fix this? Something that you would expect to do, and they can talk on the phone on a Teams call, right? Again, none of that is surprising. And out comes a document that looks like this out of a conversation. And, all the LLMs, they're smart enough to ignore conversation about, their lunch. And out comes this document that becomes very powerful. So let me build on to this in terms of, okay, this is cool. So what we're doing is talking to people, generating a document, but we still expect people to read all of this. And on top of that, you walk into a manufacturing facility and they may have 50 different screens with all of the information. So how do you coalesce all of that into what folks ought to be doing? So this kind of, goes back to, do you really need people to play 20 questions to be able to get to an answer of what to go do? It's a bit like, consider if you're driving around Las Vegas, like I am, and you don't really know where you're headed, you would rather have your, Siri or somebody on navigation tell you that, hey, you're about to make a wrong move or you just made a wrong turn, go quarter mile and turn left, and then you can be back on your track of where you're headed. You kind of don't want to ask the phone, hey, did I just miss a turn? Was I supposed to turn there? What do I go do next? You don't want to play 20 questions. You want it to tell you, you're doing this, and you should be doing this instead. That has been kind of the driver for us. And then number two, we don't want this to be a standalone capability. Right? Consider, if you have to go to a website to ask a question versus, on your phone, you can just kind of do a pull-down maneuver and be able to ask it questions, and it will figure out whether it needs to go and look up in your email or your phone or what have you and be able to prompt things to you versus going into a whole nother place. That has been a big driver for us. So what we've been able to do is, as Aaron mentioned earlier, we've been at it for some time. We have 30,000 machine learning models that we've built and kind of tuned over the years. We've integrated machine learning models with generative AI. So generative AI is always aware at all times, like, okay, what all is going on, which things are kind of out of place, which things are in alert, and it feeds that information to the operator, thereby suggesting, hey, you're doing X, you may want to consider doing ABC instead with this time, and if you were to do that, I will monitor it and tell you when things are back on track. That, to us, is this notion of can we put, AI really helping you versus kind of being there waiting for you to ask a question. We deliberately don't want folks to wait to ask for a question. And to build on to that, I mean, this is, again, kind of summarizing that whole piece. We don't want these two different things. We kind of want that to be integrated. So what does all of that mean for us? So let's talk a little bit about the foundational things. For us, asset health is a huge component. What that means is, as an organization where we have a 9-figure opportunity to figure out what assets are failing and when, we've built an app over the last couple of years where we have around 90,000 vibration sensors collecting data for us at all times. These sensors produce an astronomical amount of data. On a daily basis, we have quite a few machine learning models that we've actually, kind of built it in-house, some with partnership with AWS. It processes trillions of records of data on a daily basis and tells us what's failing. And we built models to understand, well, how do you translate that anomaly detection specifically into a corrective action? And now we can also determine remaining reliable life on an asset. So now we have a group of, a capability that tells us what's going to fail and why. Let's keep building onto that. Mm-hmm. We also have this notion of process health. Excuse me. We know assets will fail from a mechanical or electrical standpoint, but what about when people make inadvertently, not something they do on purpose, but they will make a mistake, and how do we incorporate all of that? So we have other set of models, like there's literally about 30,000 machine learning models that are consuming data from about 500,000 sensors in real time, executing and determining, is somebody making the wrong move and what should they be doing, right? So this is a diagram where you can see those different colored squiggly lines. It is deliberately telling us what is expected, what has been historical condition, and what should they be doing. So this is another, again, a model on a structured data. Now what we've been able to do with the power of generative AI over the last couple of years, or the last year really, is to take what asset's going to fail, how much time it has, why is it failing, and be able to say, what is somebody doing that they should or shouldn't be doing, or not doing that optimally, and then be able to merge that, and merge it in a capacity so it can tell an operator, without an operator even knowing that they may or may not be doing that. And now generative AI it tells us these recommended actions that, as a paper maker, I'll let Carter walk us through.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, my background is in engineering, and I did go to school to make paper. So if anybody's curious, I'm totally available after this if you want to know how paper is made. But in this case, right, I'll walk you through essentially what a morning looks like when you come on to your shift. So the first thing you look at is if anything is excursions are out, if you have any alarms, if you have any issues. Typically then, if you had something that was out, an engineer would pick that up, and they have to go through the process of understanding, okay, well, why? Why is it not where it needs to be? They would essentially come through, look at that item. They would then say, okay, with my knowledge of the process, I think 3 or 4 things could be impacting it. Let me kind of go down and explore which ones may or may not be the root cause, and that is done obviously on data, right? So you would look at kind of how your data is, if it's in normal range, if it's out of range, and this is where we really are pulling in from the other ML models that Roshan talked about, because we're able to really understand kind of what that process is doing. We have the streaming sensors, which could be anything from vibration, temperature, pressure, anything about that process that we have streaming, we have that as well, on top of having all of the best practices and what it should do. Now, for an engineer to go through this and take a couple of steps down and look through that data, it might take them an hour and a half every morning for one issue. So that means we've had an hour and a half potentially of an issue being outside of where it needs to be. Our process has not been running where it should be, where it could have impacted quality, safety, or just production in general, right? So being able to actually shorten that time is a big saving so that we can, again, get everything back on track and support folks at the facilities. So what we're doing here, you can see at the very top, it's not telling me that, hey, I have a sensor that's out, right? That would be typically in a type of alarm we might see on our distributed control system, which is what an operator would traditionally see. Here it's actually explaining this is what we believe the root cause to be. It's going through and saying, I think this is the problem, And now we could very much just say, this is the problem, go do this. But I don't know if you guys have any experience with folks that are a little skeptical of Gen AI. They might say, I don't know, I don't really trust that. Like, this is something that I don't want to mess up my process just because a computer told me to do it. Well, one of the big things that we thought was really important in here to gain trust and understanding is that it provides the logic for why it believes that. It will actually go through and look through best practice documentation. It'll look through how the process is meant to run and all of the other documents that are critical to that facility and say, based on everything that's going on, these few things are out of range with it. Therefore, we believe this to be the root cause. And it's meant to basically answer that so what question that we might get all the time working out in the field with operators where they're saying, okay, this is out, but like, what am I supposed to do about it? So this gives hey, this is basically the chain of events that we think are leading to this excursion. And then we have a lengthy list of recommended actions that they can take in order so that they can rectify it and get it back in control.
Yeah, one of the things that absolutely, the key point in there, and actually, if I can draw your attention to bullet point number 2, which may be a little hard to read. If you could, it specifically says over there, the hood pressure valve position is above centerline at 78%, exceeding the upper limit of 60%. That may seem pretty trivial, but that's incredibly powerful because this whole thing was produced without anybody asking generative AI a question. You've got sensors that are sending data. You've got models on top of it that say, oh, that sensor is not telling me what I want to hear. What should I be doing? And all of that is happening autonomously behind the scenes. And this has been the power of combining the structured data and unstructured data and letting AI truly come back and give you a recommendation versus waiting for you to play 20 questions. Mm-hmm. That, to us, has been quite powerful. And again, to Carter's point, the recommended action at the bottom, being able to tell you specifically what's going on and why you should do something different, that, to us, again, is truly, like when we think of AI, the intuitive version of AI. And this is a little bit of like, okay, so how do we come to kind of make all of this happen? So basically, in our minds, in kind of our vocabulary, what we want AI to do is give corrective action. And we kind of want it to prompt an end user and offer them a corrective action. Similar to, again, that analogy that we used, or I used a minute ago around, you want your navigation system to tell you, hey, you just missed a turn, go do this instead. That's been our thought process. And the way that all comes together is we're a large AWS user. All things for us is built on AWS. On there, we bring, again, trillions of records of data, all the knowledge that Carter has and what Carter just talked about, we embed that in our system, and we have these process models. They're all built in. They're all written in Python. They run in SaaS and AWS. And on top of that, we have this capability called intelligent decisioning. That's a SaaS product. And then we have all things Bedrock running on top of that. And everything that you see at the bottom, kind of like below the up arrow, all of that happens autonomously, and it's prompting an end user to make a corrective action, all with zero hallucination. That's key. There's a kind of a diagram of how all of this comes together, a high-level overview. I would encourage you to actually go to another session that my colleague Manish is hosting, where you'll get to see the ins and outs of how all of this actually comes together. But this is kind of like the overarching view of how it all comes together for us. Carter, you want to talk about what's next?
Yeah, for sure. So again, very excited by where we've been, everything that we've built on. It's been a very positive experience. I would say that the biggest thing for us is continuing to develop the document generation capability. I think we're definitely being able to capture valuable knowledge that's leaving our facilities, and that again is really immeasurable in its value. We're also working for scaling. We do have around 140 facilities across North America, and we have a lot more facilities that we could help leverage this technology so that they could, again, see these benefits. I think one of the biggest things for value for us is about how it scales and being able to scale it to the more people that we can so that they can all take advantage of this technology.
Yeah, and a key part of how we do that is integrating generative AI directly and all the other bodies of AI that we've kind of done. There's computer vision. We have hundreds of cameras constantly feeding computer vision models on the edge as well as on the cloud. We want to integrate all of that and make it seamless so people don't have to go into multiple environments. Nobody likes going into 5 applications to be able to answer one question. If we can embed what we do inside of people's native app without having to ask them to go do something different, that becomes powerful. People use that. In other words, don't even tell people that, oh, well, there's AI. You want to go use it? Just let AI run in the background, and wherever they are using it, just have something show up there. So if people are used to using their, HMIs or human-machine interface, their operator screens, or not too different, if you consider, we all used to have a GPS navigation that used to hang on to our car. Now, you kind of go plug in your phone, and it just shows up in your existing dashboard, right, in your car. Whether it's the Android Auto or the Apple CarPlay, it just natively integrates into your car. That's kind of been the mental model, the thought process that we're after. And we're integrating AI directly in people's environments without even telling them at times that, hey, this is AI. It just gives you a recommendation. That makes change management a little easier. People don't have to go and favorite that new app or new link. It just shows up in your existing app, whether that be on the edge or a web app. And then finally, where we think about, again, continuing to build onto the assets that we've built, the machine learning models over the last decade or so, we've been fortunate where inside of Bedrock, where we can use multiple different models, that's actually been quite powerful for us. One particular example that we actually just rolled out this past week is we get a lot of orders that come via faxes and emails and everything else. And we can consume that through different machine learning models and OCR. But if we can combine that with generative AI, which we've now done, we can let generative AI read a fax and be able to extract the right bodies of information from there without us having to physically code, well, here's the order number and here's something else. Because every customer sends it a little differently. Some people like handwrite it and send an e-fax or attach it to an email. All of that is used to be done by people or used to be done by optical, the OCRs, and those are difficult. We've been able to streamline a lot of that just by combining different capabilities, and this is where we're leveraging a lot of the models, foundational models built into Bedrock.
Yeah, so one of the things I really wanted to make sure we focus on that's very critical to this entire process, this is not something that you necessarily buy, it's something that you're building, and I think it's important to build it as a partner. I think the piece of this that's been so rewarding, at least for myself and the team, is the fact that AWS has been a true partner where they're another member of our team. We succeed together, we fail together, and we want to make sure that everybody has an equal voice in the room so that when we're building, we can build something that really is the best for what we're going after.
Yeah, I'd echo what Carter said. For us, we're not exactly in the technology business. We're in a very different business. Mm-hmm. So for us to be able to partner with somebody and say, hey, here's what we're trying to solve. How would you guys solve it? And let's do that together. That's been huge. As Aaron mentioned earlier, much of the work that we've done with generative AI, as well as, SageMaker a long time ago, we kind of had access to a lot of the capability before it became generally available. And we've been able to iterate on that with AWS. But, all of that through the lens of, hey, we kind of don't know what we want to solve for there. Here is our problem. You guys go figure out the technology, and we kind of don't want to be in the business of inventing that technology. Let's just kind of solve that together. And most importantly, for us, again, we're a manufacturing company. We run 24/7. So when something fails in the middle of the night, yeah, we call Aaron and others and say, hey, this failed. And there's not a lot of, oh, we'll go submit this ticket, and we'll come back to you on Tuesday morning in business hours. It's been, yep, we will solve it with you, because if we're up in the middle of the night, we've actually had folks from AWS kind of working with us to solve these problems, because again, we run 24/7. So in this journey, kind of having partners who work with you and feel your pain, so to speak, has been quite valuable.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add from from an AWS perspective, I think there's really 3 non-negotiables that we look for in every opportunity that we support Georgia Pacific with. The first is mutual benefit. GP does not think of AWS or treat us like a tech vendor. We are not someone who shows up and sells technology. It's not just a financial transaction. We look for opportunities where there's mutual benefit to be gained by collaborating together. Example, getting GP to partner with us on a pre-GA release with Bedrock, full well knowing it was going to be a little bit clunky because the service wasn't quite ready for prime time yet. Benefit to Georgia Pacific is they were able to build this very early and had a lot of support from AWS. Benefit to AWS is that we got some really valuable feedback from a willing partner who wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty. Second is intellectual honesty. GP challenges us and expects that AWS will raise our hand and say, great idea, that's not us, if we are not advantaged to deliver a capability for a use case. I'll give you a very exaggerated example just to make the point. If GP were to come to us and say, hey, we would like to build an ERP system, ground up AWS native services. They never would, they never have. But if they did, they would expect us to say, hey guys, great idea. Maybe we should introduce you to a partner first. We have people who we work with, partners that we would recommend that are more advantaged to deliver this capability than us working with you to build it ground up net new. Yes. And then third is really kind of leaning into comparative advantage. What that means is, do you have the right people who can accelerate, do it better, faster, cheaper, to achieve a business outcome as quickly as possible? I'm assuming most folks in this room have worked with AWS. You know how many Amazonians there are. There are a lot of us. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of programs. Knowing who to call and who to tag in for different aspects of a program or a project can be a little bit overwhelming. That's where the account team, we kind of view our role in this. We are expected to bring the right people, programs, talent, funding, technologists, whatever it is to help GP realize their business outcomes as quickly as possible. In this particular use case, we were able to tap into two specific groups inside of AWS who I would encourage all of you to come chat with them afterwards if you're interested, talk to your account teams if it would be valuable. The first is the Gen AI Innovation Center. So again, if you think back to early 2023, the talent pool of folks who were deeply experienced with LLMs was pretty narrow. The Gen AI Innovation Center is a group of very deep technical experts who kind of brought that knowledge to the table and helped GP get the working prototype up and running. From there, it transitioned to ProServe, which is really kind of our consultants who were two in a box with GP. One of the most powerful things about the build was that the team was entirely GP and AWS, kind of the whole time. It was never AWS building and handing off. It was never GP building and tagging in AWS as they needed help on an ad hoc basis. It was very much a one-team model. We were actually joking about it yesterday. We call it two pizza teams at Amazon. At GP, it is 10 tacos and tequila, especially if it goes a little bit late. But it's very much a one-team model. We win together, we fail together, and it's not not a vendor relationship where we ever say, "Good luck, GP, you made it. Have fun." And I think that really has made all the difference, both in this use case and really has kind of teed up additional opportunities as we've earned trust and kind of helped make an impact for those end users.
Just for clarity, sometimes it's been 10 tacos and tequila. Other times it's been 10 tequila and some tacos.
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Depends how late it gets.
Absolutely.
All right, if any questions, we can hang around and answer some after. But thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys about, again, our lessons learned and kind of what's worked and a lot of failures.
Absolutely. And I would say, too, again, thank you for spending basically your lunch break with us. We greatly appreciate it. We do have a colleague who is going to be going into a deeper dive of the architecture, a little bit more of a technical discussion. That will be here tomorrow at the MGM. So there's a QR code there if you'd like to scan and kind of give information onto that session. Definitely highly encourage you to give them a visit.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.